Welcome to Behind the Stats with Matt Cross, a podcast taking a deeper dive into the sports stars from around the world so you can get to know the person behind the stats. Behind the Stats is sponsored by Buzz Physique. Use code MATT10 to apply 10% off your orders. And now, here's your host, Matt Cross.
Okay, brilliant. Welcome to episode 4 of Behind the Stats with Matt Cross. Just a really quick another thank you to Buzz Physique for still being involved with us. It's been a little while since we've had an episode out, so glad to see them still supporting the brand. Today, I am extremely honoured and privileged to welcome not only a brilliant swimmer back in his day, a superb swimming coach, and now changing the world with his own podcast and other things that we'll talk about later that I don't want to reveal too much about now. But from across the pond, it's Steve Mellor. Thank you for joining us.
Matt, good to be here, buddy. So glad that you've decided to have me on. I'm going to try to sound as British as I possibly can. Otherwise, I'm going to get torn apart if I let my American twang kick in too much. So.
Well, it's been a few years now. I mean, just remind us, when was it you actually left the UK?
Yeah, so I swam with Stockport Metro through 2005 and moved to Raleigh, North Carolina in August of 2005. I had a short sort of 2-year stint back in the UK in 2012, 2013. But aside from that, most of the last 16 years now, I've been stateside. So you'll forgive me for sounding a bit less, a little bit less from the northwest of England and a little bit more from the south of America. So
we can let it go, mate. But look, Steve, we'll jump in. Obviously, we spoke there. You've swam for Stockport Metro. And then moved over to Raleigh, North Carolina, to continue your swimming career there. What was the sort of draw of getting yourself out to the States rather than carry on in the UK?
Yeah, it was, funnily enough, the more that I started to reflect on this over the years, the more I kind of stumbled across a pretty significant truth, which was my dad and I used to talk about it when I was growing up. We used to just have these little moments on Friday nights while we put away whatever Chinese, Indian fish and chips we'd had for dinner on a Friday, and we'd just sit there just talking, and he would sometimes just drop it in, like, have you ever thought about maybe you could get yourself into one of these US scholarships one day? And I would just sort of go, oh yeah, I want to be on the British team. And that was kind of my thing. It's like, if I go to the US, it's going to be a lot harder to do that and all that kind of thing. And lo and behold, I worked my way through the British setup and became pretty much the very strictly established third best 200 backstroker in the UK. But there was a sizable gap between myself and James Goddard and Gregor Tate. And then there was a decent gap between myself and the rest of the pack following me. And I kind of found myself in this weird situation where it was like, I think I can be a sub 2-minute 200 backstroker. I don't think I'm ever going to have the ability to be 155, 156 the way James and Gregor were. What's the right thing for my life? Not for my swimming. What's the right thing for my life? And so fortunately, I had enough of a support system, including people that I was swimming with at the time, that were able to introduce me to the US and some opportunities. And once all the information was put on the table in front of me, I would say, I'll be an idiot not to say yes to this. And I think I got the decision right. So,
yeah, definitely. And I guess from that as well, you say you were third best, but after you moved out to North Carolina, you then made the British teams for European Championships. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So it's funny. I mean, that was kind of literally the last swim I had in the UK before I went to the US was kind of my coming out swim. I dropped the two minutes flat pretty much, which in 2005 meant more than it does today. And, and I pushed, Gregor Tate just come back from, I think, World Championships. So he was kind of at the back end of his taper. And so I gave him a race. And I'd never given him a race before. I was there with him into the last turn, and then he just kind of took me in the last 25. And I celebrated coming second and going 200 as though I'd actually won the race. And Gregor was just sort of looking at me like, dude, calm down. I'm like, mate, I've never swam this fast before. Don't tell me to calm down. And anyway, yeah, so it was a great moment, and it put me on a European team later that year, which, again, like I said, being able to swim for Great Britain was always the goal. So the fact that swim put me in that position, obviously very grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And it was like you said, that coming of age, that come out swim that really allowed you. Do you think that transition to the States allowed that to happen? Do you think the training you got, the facilities, the extra support, maybe from what you were getting at college, allowed that swim to come out more than it would have if you had been in?
Well, yeah. So just to correct you a little bit, like I did that swim. No, it's all right. I did that. That was literally my last swim for Stockport Metro.
Right. Okay.
So that was all me, Sean Kelly, the guys over there at the time in 2005. But just to kind of take what you're saying, like what it did do is it forced me to sort of acknowledge, like, hey, there's something here, like because I was, unlike most, like I was 19, almost, I think I was 20 years old when I went that swim. Most people that I'd come up with through the ranks, they were doing things at 13, 14 for why they were on junior teams when they were 14, 15, 16. And I wasn't on those teams. But I kept getting told by people, like, stick with it, stick with it, stick with it. So for me, it was this coming of age moment for me where it was like, I'm so glad that I stuck with it, because so many people that had those opportunities that I didn't when I was 15, 16, they'd all kind of come and gone through 17, 18, 19. And once they started to regress and plateau, they kind of just threw it away. Whereas I just always kept getting better, but I was kind of that tortoise in the hare approach, and I was just playing the tortoise. That was all.
Ah, brilliant. Okay, so talk to us about Europeans. What happened at Europeans? I haven't got any official stats in front of me to bring it up. So can you remember what happened and how it went?
It wasn't great. I'll be honest. It was pretty poor, and I put it down to just adapting to the new training and new life in the US. And what's funny is that through that first season being in the US, I was a bit of a mess mentally. Physically, I was still showing up and still getting it done, but I actually went through just a roller coaster of a transition of being massively homesick at first. I think it was about week 3 that I was there, and I'm calling family. I'm like, I think I'm done. I think I need to get out of this thing. I just don't think this is for me. And it's great. It's been so long since I've even thought about this and talked about this stuff. But for me in that moment, there's guys that ended up being in my wedding, later in life, that were able to kind of just pull me to one side way back there. Both people that I was getting to meet for the first time in Raleigh, but then also a few guys like James Goddard, Graham Smith, like guys that I'd swam with at Stockport Metro that had been through that I'd gone through some incredible things with, and they'd achieved some awesome things while we were training together. We're kind of there, like, dude, just don't do anything rash. Like, you've got a great opportunity there. So these were guys that they could have easily said, oh yeah, dude, like, come on back, like, just don't worry about it. But they didn't. They said, like, listen, you've been wanting this for a while. Don't be silly. Don't jump on the first plane and come back.
Don't throw it away too quickly.
Yeah. So I went through a lot of it, man. Honestly, I went through lots of ups and downs. I had a couple of injuries through my first year over there as well. So the first year, in so many ways, couldn't have been less, beneficial for someone to come back and compete well in international competition. But once I got through that first year, I started to figure it out from there.
That's great. And then let's talk then. Obviously, the transition. You were with North Carolina as a swimmer, and then you started doing a little bit of work with them on pool deck as well. How does that transition work? Because in the UK, it's pretty standard. You go, I'm retiring, and then you just pick up a stopwatch, and you end up taking the junior kids or whatever else. Right. The natural transition. How was that for you over in the States?
Man, yeah, it's a lot different. and just to make sure, like no one in the UK is going to care about this, but if a few of my mates over here hear this, it's North Carolina State University.
Okay.
If people think it's the University of North Carolina, it'd be the equivalent of saying, did you play for Liverpool or did you play for Man United, and getting it the wrong way around. So I say it like that purposely, because I'm just like, listen, I didn't go to North Carolina, I went to North Carolina State. It's different. But anyway, the thing for me, when I made the transition into coaching, it wasn't something I deliberately did. I finished my swimming career. I had a shoulder surgery immediately, torn labrum, swam with a torn labrum for a number of months, which I would never recommend to anybody. And touched the wall, grabbed my arm, and just said, "Take me. Where's the knife? Get in there, get it done. Thank you." And then I was done, and that was it. And would come by the pool just to say hi to people. With one arm and all that kind of thing, and but before I knew it, I would just I'd be walking around saying hi to a few coaches and things like that, and someone would be doing something in the pool, and I'd just be like, "Hey, if you don't do that, like that's lazy. Don't do that. Like do this." And I had a reputation to be able to talk to someone like that, and then before I knew it, what was supposed to be just a pop in, say hi, and leave turned into like 30 minutes of coaching that I didn't even realize I was doing until I walked away. And I'm like, did I just coach? Like, is that what I just did? And so anyway, suddenly the opportunity to stay and do my master's degree at NC State was on the table, and made a commitment to that. And the beauty of that is that they actually pay you then to help coach the college team while you're getting your master's degree too. So you're sort of an assistant to the assistants, if you will. And so that was amazing, because there was opportunities for me to say yes to things that nobody else wanted to do, whether it was staying behind and working on some technique, working on some video, because the coaches needed to get going to do whatever it was they do, with their full-time job. I was able to find opportunities to do more one-on-one work, which, to be perfectly honest, is my happy place. Like when I'm working one-on-one with an athlete, and in the work that I do today, like that's where I'm at my happiest, is having that complete engagement with somebody one-on-one. And that's where I got the bug, man. I mean, just at that point then I was just like, wow, I talk and they respond to me. This is interesting. This is a paradigm that I wasn't prepared for this. It was, and so that immediate response and engagement that athletes showed me got me hooked.
Definitely, it's a different kind of buzz, isn't it? I know I felt that when I first started coaching. You retire from competing, and that's a certain buzz, but then that respect almost, and the way they respond, and you just see something maybe slightly different. It takes that buzz for you and puts it back in. So you were with NC State. You mentioned, obviously, you had that brief little period where you came back to the UK. What is it you were doing while you were back in the UK for that brief stint?
It was a mess, to be honest with you, because it wasn't the plan, really. So when I finished my master's degree at North Carolina State, I had an opportunity to work at Louisiana State University for a year, which I took, and I did that, and I loved it. And the plan was to get a new work visa and keep going. And then there was a whole mess between the university and the immigration stuff. And before I knew it, it was just like, pack your bags, you're on the next boat. And so for me, I was like, oh wow, hello reality, just like a massive dose of reality just kind of slapped me around the face. And then before I knew it, like I said, I was trying to figure my life out, honestly, in the UK. And I tried recruitment for a little while, and goodness me, did I hate it. And I got nothing against that world. I got some really good friends that do it, but it's like any world, right? Everyone finds themselves in it, and they see themselves in it. And I just couldn't sell. I'm not a salesman. It's not what I like to do. I like to have authentic communication, relationships, etc. And the selling part of it didn't come easy. So that's not a good thing in the recruiting world. So anyway, the beauty of that, though, was to see how little I enjoyed that. Reminded me how much I enjoyed coaching. So I actually went down and worked with a swim school called Creative Aquatics down in Frome, just near Bath. And worked there for almost a year. Simone Ben-Hayen still works there to this day. And I'm so appreciative for that, because I was in the water with like 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds teaching swimming all over again. I was spending 5 hours a day in the water, and it was almost therapeutic. It was like, hey, remember when swimming was just fun and nothing else? It wasn't competitive. It wasn't anything. It was just pure emotion, pure satisfaction for putting your face in the water today and being able to get out and tell mom, hey, I did it. I did it. I did it. You know, like that little things like that.
Yeah.
It was beautiful in a way to get that reminder that this is how we all started on this path of being in swim coaching or being in swimming or being in sport. You know, so it was really great for me. And then I decided to come back up north, started my own personal training business. And it was right then that LSU, Louisiana State University, pretty much got back in touch and said, listen, we figured it all out. And this is about 2 years later. We figured it all out. We've got a vacancy. Let's do it. And I was like, sounds good to me. So that was it.
And the rest is history, as they say.
There you go. There you go.
So obviously, then comes the move back to LSU, and that's kind of more where I know you from. Obviously, we sort of connected a little bit more then. I knew of you while we were swimming. You know, I look 10 years older, but I'm a couple years younger. So I was 200 back as well. So you were a name that was always like, let's try and chase those guys. Yeah. But in terms of us talking was really when now a friend of ours, but a former athlete, we sent Harry Ackland obviously out to LSU, and then I came over to the SEC championships, and that's when we really had the first proper conversation that we'd had for other than a hello as we walk past each other on poolside sort of thing. So you've got back out to LSU and you start. What position did you take originally? Because I know there's about 17 different positions other than head coach in America, which
it all comes back to stroking the ego. It's like, all right, this person needs another word in their title, so let's stroke their ego and give them another word. But yeah. So I was just an assistant coach, a lowly assistant coach when I first came back. And I was actually, funny enough, the first year that I was there, the 1 year that I was there in 2011, 2012, I had just 12 lads that I was working with. That was it. No women, strictly sort of mid-distance to a little bit of distance. And then I came back, and the major vacancy was in sprinting. There wasn't really a sprint coach around within the staff. And I've been doing some work in personal training, so my whole mind had shifted in terms of like, hey, the body is capable of learning and adapting and getting better as an athlete on land or in short bursts in the water as it is with, as history tells us, swimming up and down the pool for 50, 60, 70,000, meters a week. So I came back with this kind of different perspective on coaching, on swimming. And through the spring of 2015, when I first came back, I slowly more and more started working with sprint-based athletes. And by that summer, that was me. I was the sprint coach. So it's kind of crazy when you hear it that way, because it's like, wow, that's a big responsibility for someone that didn't really, not necessarily go through that as an athlete, get as much experience of that with coaching. But the one thing with me is like, I've always let athletes help me coach them in the sense of, hey, listen, I'm going to try it this way. Give me your feedback. Okay, we're going to try it this way today. Give me your feedback. And so for me, it's like, I'm willing to stand there in that first year as a sprint coach and say, this is what we're going to do. You guys are the sprinters. And if we finish this session and you're just like, half of that didn't make any sense for me as an athlete, then I want you to come and respectfully tell me that. I don't want you to scream at me halfway through the session going, why are we doing this? Why are we I don't want to hear that, but I want that professional feedback. And so I let the athletes teach me through that first year, and it was the best education I could have asked for. And from that moment on, I had my identity as a sprint coach, and 6 years later, I was still doing it. So
it's amazing how that sort of transition, just from those couple of bits you did back in the UK and things, it just flips your mindset completely on how you've approached your coaching, I suppose. And then, so you've taken the role as assistant, and then I know you eventually moved up to what the Americans call an associate head coach.
Associate head coach. Yeah, it's like if you watch the American Office, it's like, the assistant to the regional manager. It's like a way of it's a way of making someone think, hey, listen, you're getting those head coaching responsibilities now, but you're not the head coach just yet. You're not calling the shots and all that kind of thing. A lot of it, though, more than anything, was a reward for my loyalty and my commitment. Because one thing you don't see a lot in the US is assistant coaches hanging around very long. They're always trying to work their way up the ladder, and they spend 2 years here, 3 years here, 2 years here. And I spent 8 seasons there before I decided to step away. So that was kind of unheard of, especially for someone in the late 20s, early 30s. And I had opportunities to leave, but for me, it was like, I see the potential for what we can do here. So it was very much a reward for that more than anything.
That's amazing. And then I suppose in one of your final seasons, maybe not knowing you the way I do, maybe not the biggest reward as a coach, but certainly the sort of biggest thing we can do as a swimming coach to have our name as part of is you worked with obviously with Brooks Curry, and you were his sort of main, I guess, the main coach of him going through what ended up being the first Olympic gold medalist for LSU.
Yeah, and it's an amazing story, honestly. I mean, but what it did is it validated my approach to coaching really more than anything. Because you know what it's like working in the world of any sports coach. Everyone's got their beliefs that there's certain ways that work better than other ways, and to a certain point, you have to respect this way or respect doing it this way, and all this kind of thing. And the one thing for me during my 8.5 seasons with LSU was I consistently believe that connecting with the athlete and nurturing the athlete as a person at the foundation would always provide in the long term, would always provide the best rewards. Now, occasionally the beauty of that was that I would connect with someone quickly and they would really start to adapt to the work we were doing quickly, and the results would come quicker. And that was very much the case by the time I sort of got to the last 3 years of my time at LSU. It was just like season upon season. It was more NCAA swimmers, more US finalists, all this kind of stuff. Like things just kept happening from that foundation of years, sort of, establishing what it was I was doing. And then Brooks Curry kind of came into my life in like 2018. 2018, I started recruiting him. No one was recruiting him. No one. And that was the beauty of it, was like, I see you. I can tell what you can be. And I want you here, and I want to work with you because I know how good you can be. Now, the one thing I always joke with people is like, no one could have ever convinced me that he would be as good as he was, as quickly as he was. That was the part that I never saw coming. However, the beauty of his and I's relationship was that from the very beginning, I got to be 100% me, and he got to be 100% him. And people look at a kid like him and they say, wow, that kind of talent, he could have been successful anywhere. And I always push back and I say, I'm sorry, but that disrespects everything that we worked on, because the fact is that a guy like Brooks Curry needed to be nurtured as a human more than he needed to be nurtured as an athlete. The athlete stuff was always going to come in time. But once he set foot in our program in 2019, and I actually had the day-to-day interaction as opposed to just phone call to phone call through the recruiting process, within a couple of weeks, I was like, wow, this could fall into place quicker than I ever imagined. And lo and behold, within a couple of weeks of training, a couple months of development and education, and also that familiarity, that bond between he and I was built so quickly and so naturally, that he was able to be his truest self. And that meant being able to tell me that things were too difficult and all this kind of thing. And so we just had this great relationship, and that relationship was just the foundation for everything that he then went on and did. And the one thing, Matt, I always make clear is like, he's the one that did it. He's the one that did it. As a coach, it's like, hey, I believed in my methodology. I believed how to do it, but the kid was the one that did it. The kid was the one that dealt with standing in a U.S. Olympic time trials at night in front of a crowd of 5,000 people, knowing that there was a couple million people watching them at home, and swam a 48 a 48-19 and made the Olympic team. Like he had to do that, and I'm glad it wasn't me because I couldn't have done it.
No, definitely. So look, then obviously now we're transitioning. You've left swimming coaching.
Yeah.
What was the motivation behind leaving swimming coaching if it's not going to upset anyone by you explaining that?
I'm not going to call anybody out. No. The heart of it for about 18 months prior to my deciding to leave swimming is my podcast, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point. But my podcast, Career Competitor, which I started in the summer of 2018, had really started to build some momentum. I started getting introduced to people in all sorts of walks of life, specifically here in the US. And I'm continuing to interview, famous CEOs, well-established business people, well-established people in the world of sports. And the more and more I engage with these people, the more and more these people would encourage me to consider life beyond swimming in terms of just, hey, listen, like the way you hear things, the way you perceive things, the way you seem to sort of reframe and reword certain points that people make so that other people can understand it. It's a skill set in itself, and it's something that can be very effective in just about any other walk of life when it comes to coaching, when it comes to bringing the best out of people. So for me, I kept getting this feedback, after we would finish recording interviews, and I would just be like, thank you so much, appreciate it, and then get back in the car and go back to swimming. So for me, that was very much the case behind the scenes for about 18 months. And then my boss of the entire time at LSU came to an agreement with administration that it was going to be the end of his contract and he was done. And with that sort of thing in the US, all the assistant coaches then are vulnerable to losing their jobs as they seek out this new head coach. And fortunately, in my case, in that time period between my old boss losing his job and the new boss being hired, I put LSU's first ever US guy on an Olympic team, which was a decent resume builder, to say the least. And so for me, that was great. And the new guy wanted me to stick around. And within a matter of days, to be honest, Matt, I knew from a personality standpoint, it just wasn't going to work. It just wasn't going to work. And as hopefully you can sort of tell through the first 20 minutes of this, like, I like to be me. I like to be authentic. Yeah. I like to build relationships. And that wasn't welcomed for whatever reason. And I've very much come to peace with that at this point. And have nothing but, positive memories of my time at LSU and more so in swim coaching, lots of wonderful, positive memories. However, the moment I decided to step away from swimming, I was just like, so now what? And I looked at this name, Career Competitor, which my podcast was and is to this day. And I said, well, what does that look like as a business? And so I spent time, I spent about 4 days really sitting down, researching and thinking about this thing, and came up with this sort of coaching and consulting model that I've now been running for about 11 months. And it continues to evolve, continues to change all the time. But the beauty of it is I get to do now with business owners and leaders and professionals in all walks of life over here. I get to do now with them what I was doing with athletes in the pool. The process is in so many ways so similar, and it's about encouraging someone to strive towards their best self, and that's it. And at its core, that's it. There's a lot of work that goes on around it, but that intentionality behind what I'm doing of just, hey, how can we serve you? And by serving you, say a business owner, how will that version of you then serve all of these employees that work for you, for instance, or all of your clients that you deal with all the time? And everybody wins as far as I'm concerned in that type of thing.
No, definitely. And you mentioned it there, you've had the podcast going now for 4 years. The business that you started pretty much a year ago now. And then there's for anyone that follows you on sort of social media or is friends with you on Facebook or anything like that, they'll have seen today that there's a new strand, a new string to your bow, so to speak, and you've become an author.
Yeah, man. I like to think of it as a feather in the hat because, like yourself, like yourself, I've not got any hair on my head, so I might as well wear a hat. But yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy. It's honestly crazy. I actually can't believe, and it's going to take a while for me to say yeah, I'm an author, and I've already had these moments in the last couple of weeks privately with a few people that I've known for a while. I'll start the sentence like, I talk about this in my book, and I'm like, I don't know if I like saying that. Do I come off as a I don't know what I come off as when I start a sentence like that. I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's going to take some adjustment. But anyway, yeah, the beauty of it is so much of what we've just been talking about. That was the genesis of the book. That's where it came from. I took a complete unknown kid in the world of swimming, and in 2 years he put himself on a US Olympic team. And what I love about the story, first and foremost, just as itself, you don't hear that story very often in the world of swimming. You just don't. And
No.
it's a great story in itself, but that's not what the book is. The book is so much about my approach to coaching someone like that. And then I pull in about 18 examples of how other people have done. They've realized their potential, if you will, that have come on the podcast and talked to me about that. So the book's called Shock the World, A Competitor's Guide to Realizing Your Potential. So it's all right there. It's about, hey, what can you do to shock the world? What can you do to realize your potential? And it's a nice short book because I wrote it as though I would be the one reading it. And I don't do well with long books. So
Okay.
for me, it's a nice 128 page book. It's got lots of drawings in it and places where you can fill in things. I'm just like, okay, that's about right for me. So hopefully that'll be good for a lot of other people too.
Fantastic. And have you got a rough idea of release date, both US and UK, or?
Yeah, in the US, October 15th, and I'm thinking it's probably going to be 2 weeks later in the UK. So I'm hoping by the end of October, I'm going to get a big shipment out to the UK and set it up. Maybe have my mom and dad put some books in envelopes and ship them out to people. So,
mate, no, well, if there's anything I can do to help, you let me know.
Cheers,
I'll be sure to order one straight away. No, that's and that's such an amazing sort of, you've drawn on all of your experience there, not only your swimming coaching, but then also all the lessons you've learned from talking to the pretty incredible people you've had on your podcast. I think it's, it's testament to you that you're still willing to learn from all those people and then put it on paper for everyone else to try and learn from you.
And that's what you're doing with the show, right, mate? I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's so easy just to look at the results and just say, hey, wow, you're so successful. Wow, you've achieved this. And it's like, well, there's so many lessons to be learned behind those achievements. And again, as I was alluding to with Brooks Curry's story, it's like you can just take that for an amazing story and appreciate it for what it is. And maybe that's enough. But to me, it's like, well, why not try to motivate more people to do that? Why not give people some sort of map of like, hey, here's a way you could do it. And that's kind of what I'm offering with the book is like, hey, here's an idea, here's a way of doing it, here's an opportunity for you to maybe realize that you're capable of something you hadn't yet realized. So but that's what I love about your show, mate, is that you're saying, hey, here's someone that's achieved this, and let's get behind that. Let's pull back at what's at the surface and go a little deeper, if you will.
No, I appreciate that. It's always been a thing for me growing up. I've read about all these sports stars and coaches and people from the world, but you only know what they allow you to see in the public light. It's getting to know that actual human, and then that can, maybe you can learn something from that to take into your own life. Speaking of, as a human being, it's your anniversary today as well. So
Yes, it is.
So congratulations. I'm sorry I'm stealing you on such an important day. So
no, it's all right. She's at work. It's all right. I mean, when you've got two kids and your anniversary falls on a weeknight, it's you don't celebrate it until the weekend anyway. So it's just any ordinary day here.
Well, congratulations.
Cheers.
So let's see. I asked you, and I've asked all my guests to do this so far. I asked you to come up with 3 songs that maybe mean something, resonate with you, bring out an emotion. So without sort of hanging around too much, what's the song number 1 that you've gone for?
Well, now that you brought up the anniversary part of this. The first song I have to mention is the song that my wife and I danced to at our wedding, which is James Morrison, "You Make It Real," which surprised if I had a few British people obviously over for the wedding here in the US, and I gave them all day to try and guess what it would be. I told them it's going to be something British, but so lots of Ed Sheeran guesses and things like that. I'm like, no, sorry. So that's the first one. The second one, sticking with the British side of it, is Oasis, little by little.
Yeah.
Mainly because that is kind of in many ways been my approach to life, is always assuming that there's an opportunity to do it, little by little, and you just got to be patient about it. And the the last one is just a funny one, because for me it's, I have two kids. My daughter's 3, my son's 2. But the beauty is my daughter's already showing signs that being on the stage one day might be in her future.
Okay.
So Let It Go from Frozen.
Brilliant.
because and again, there's a reason. Because the entertainment that I get from watching my daughter sing Let It Go on the back seat of the car while I'm driving. I've hit 37 years old, and there's little moments in my life where I can be as entertained as I am by her doing that. So for me, that I had to put that one in, because hopefully maybe 10 or 15 years I could play this episode back and say, Daddy was embarrassing you even way back then. So
this is definitely an 18th birthday
there you go.
sort of video coming out. Definitely. No, mate, 3 brilliant songs, and all with really, really great meanings. Now I know obviously we're sort of moving through. I'm going to play this with everybody. Couple of them are the same. Couple of them have been a bit different. But I play Would You Rather games
Like it
all the time at coaching. I'll just randomly turn around to a swimmer and ask them a Would You Rather, just to distract them from the fact I'm about to give them 6100s max or something. Now, the first one is one I've asked every guest. So if you've listened, you've probably heard this one. So would you rather go back to being 10 years old, but have your current brain? So you're you, but back when you were 10 years old. Or would you rather have 10 million, I suppose, dollars for you, dumped straight into your bank account immediately as we speak?
Definitely the latter. Definitely $10 million. Mainly because I love being a 10-year-old in a 10-year-old's body. I don't want to know what I know now as a 10-year-old. I'd rather be naive and stupid, to be honest. So yeah, that's and plus 10 million sounds like there's a few good trips that come with that too. So
yeah, there's 1 or 2 things you could do with that, definitely. So one I had to think about, and one I got asked the other day. Would you rather lose an arm or lose a leg?
I think I'd rather lose a leg, to be honest. Mainly because, I spend most of my days sat at a desk anyway, right? So I've got my arms. If I've got my arms available, I can still be productive, I think. It would make working out a little bit difficult, but I think I'd rather keep my arms, to be honest.
See, I think for me, and the way my brain went with that one is, I wouldn't want to lose the sensation of touch.
Yeah.
But also prosthetic legs just seem to be a little bit better than prosthetic arms at the moment. So if I'm gonna get one, I'd rather have one that was, maybe a few more years in advance.
Right.
Okay, so the last one, last Would You Rather before I hand my show over to you. Would you rather be incredibly famous? Everyone knows who you are. You can't walk down the street without people knowing you, but you have very little money, very little finance? Or would you rather be incredibly rich, silly amounts of money, Jeff Bezos sort of money in the bank, right. But nobody knows who you are? Not a single person knows you.
Probably the first one, to be honest. I think I'm so driven by engagement that I just don't. I don't think there's any amount of money that could make me happy and have to just never engage ever again. I think that's just a life for me. It would be a life not worth living, to be honest. In not being able to engage with people. So yeah, I have to go with the first one.
Brilliant. No, they're great answers. Right, well, Steve, obviously I've been on your podcast already, so I'm interested to see where this one goes. But handing the show over to you, as I have done with every guest towards the end, and feel free to ask me the questions that you maybe have come up with.
Yeah, the first one I have to ask you, because I think about this a lot, is what else would you do if you weren't coaching?
Okay, so I mean, if I think back to when I was much younger, I wouldn't say much smaller, but much younger. I've always been pretty tall. I always wanted to work with like sea life. I always wanted to be involved in. I've grown up in the southwest of England. There's beaches everywhere. I was extremely lucky to visit America, and I know you're not supposed to talk about it anymore, but I went to SeaWorld and things when I was younger, and I always just had this fascination with maybe working with with sea life, with the dolphins, with the manatees. Manatees are my favorite animal, by the way. They're superb. So I always I would maybe say something down that sort of route, maybe marine biology or something to do with sea life.
I like it. And the other question I have, just because so much of what we've spoken about is obviously swimming related, if there could have been another sport that you had coached or played, for that matter, and dedicated your life to, let's put it that way, what sport would that be?
So probably basketball. So again, as I just said, incredibly lucky when I was younger. I managed to visit the States a few times, went and did, Orlando and Disney, but we also managed to take in Orlando Magic game. And they were playing the Phoenix Suns, and Charles Barkley was still at the Phoenix Suns.
Wow.
And I just fell in love with the game of basketball, the atmosphere, the passion of the crowd, the t-shirts being fired out of guns into just everything about the situation around that game of basketball. And I was also in a fortunate position that when I got back to school and everything, I was 4 foot taller than everyone else by the time I was 11, so it worked in my favor playing basketball for school. So I think, if I hadn't have developed my sort of love and maybe showing a bit of talent in swimming, I think probably basketball would have been the one I went down.
I'm right there with you, mate. Honestly, I fell in love with basketball in the mid-90s. I actually have a picture of some art in the top right corner of my screen. You can't really see it, but it's Kobe Bryant, and Kobe Bryant taught me to love the sport of basketball, and then the rest was history in terms of that. It's like 25 years later, I'm still a massive fan of it. So I think I would have gone basketball as well, to be honest.
Yeah. Who's your team though?
The Lakers, which has its ups and downs like any team. I'm a Liverpool fan too, so it's been about 34 years of waiting and 3 years of success. So,
oh man, no, well, I won't talk too much about Liverpool, but I'm a Man United fan, and we did manage to beat you the other day, which touch wood has changed our season, because it was it was pretty terrible before that. Brilliant. No, Steve, look, I cannot thank you enough for giving up the time to be here and be with me. I know you're an incredibly busy guy now, so I don't want to drag you away for too much longer. But it's been brilliant to get to know a little bit more about you. I cannot wait for the book to come out. I've jotted down end of October for the pre-sale. I'll get the order in as soon as you let me know it's available. But yeah, thank you so much, Steve. It's been a real honor to sort of flip it from the other way around, and have you on here, and wish you every success in the future, and and best of luck with the book.
Matt, cheers, mate. Honestly, it's been lovely being on. And again, if no one checked out your episode of my podcast, Career Competitor, you should go do it. I got some really nice feedback from Matt joining the show. So definitely encourage people to go listen to it. But Matt, appreciate the time, mate. Thank you.
Cheers, Steve. And just really quickly, mate, how can people get in touch with you if there's anything they want to talk to you about?
Yeah, you can go to my website, careercompetitor.com. You can also find me on Instagram's place where I spend most of my time. And it's just coach_Steve_M for Mellor. And I get to say my name properly on this show. It's nice. The Americans put this weird or on the end of my name. So it's nice to say Mellor and not have to spell it out for people.
Brilliant. No, when we get it all sent out, I'll link you all up to everything as well. But again, Steve, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Stats with Matt Cross, sponsored by Buzz Physique. Go to buzzphysi.co.uk and use the code MATT10 to apply 10% off your orders. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, keep up with the show on Twitter at @behind_Matt and on Instagram at @BehindTheStatsWithMatt. Until next time.